Hey everyone, and welcome to another Zoo Notable, where we care for our planet and our animals by taking better care of ourselves. I'm PJ with ZooFit, and this time I'm going to be tackling the wonderful book, The Pursuit of Perfect by Tal Ben-Shahar. Now this is a bit of an interesting choice for a Zoo Notable because there were no obvious signs when I was reading it that's for animal care professionals, just something anyone can learn from. But the more I read this gem, the more I found it hard not to relate these ideas to animal trainers, zookeepers, and others in the field. So while the book was definitely written with anyone in mind, I wanted to share how it resonated with me and how it can resonate to those in the animal care field. So let's dive into my favorite ideas from The Pursuit of Perfect. And first we'll start off with a great quote from Tal Ben-Shahar. The central and defining characteristic of perfectionism is the fear of failure. The perfectionist is driven by this fear. The optimalist does not like to fail either, and nobody does. But the optimalist understands that there is no other way to learn and ultimately succeed. Now that is from the introduction to Pursuit of Perfect. Tal Ben-Shahar was a positive psychology professor at Harvard University before becoming a consultant, author, and lecturer. He is the author of several New York Times bestsellers, and I was fortunate enough to receive personal coaching from Tal during my Optimized Coach program, and I loved that moment more than almost anything else so far. Now, Tal helped me through my perfectionist standards that I have set with ZooFit. While I enjoy connecting with people, even in the smallest way, I often get frustrated with the slow pace in which I'm reaching others. So I asked him, when am I being overly Pollyanna about my approach? And when am I being too hard on myself? Now, during that coaching session, Tal shared a story with me that I'm familiar with, and you probably are too. The story of the boy and the sea star. It goes, an old man watched a young boy walking along the beach, picking up sea stars that had washed ashore and tossing them back into the water. Now, there were hundreds of these little stars all along the sand. Why are you doing this? The man asked. You can't possibly get all the sea stars. What difference are you making? Without skipping a beat, the boy picked up another sea star and threw it back in the water and said, made a difference to that one. Now this is similar to what I call the hummingbird story. We can only do what we can. But know that doing what we can will make all the difference to those whose lives we touch. And know that whether we make an impact on 4 people or 40 people, we are making an impact and we are making a difference. And the Pursuit of Perfect embodies the persona of the hummingbird. Rather than being perfect, we can strive to be optimalist, which by definition does what they can. In fact, the Oxford Dictionary defines optimal as the best, most favorable, especially under a particular set of circumstances. Now, we'll say understanding what an optimalist is and actually being optimalist can be a little bit different. And this notable was actually pretty difficult to complete. And I just wanted to impart all the ideas that Tal shares and the ideas that resonated, but there were just way too many. After combing through the book several times, I found the repeated gems that served me the best. But this also took me a long time to finish because I was wanting to impart all these ideas, and that's basically my perfectionism rearing its ugly head. But perfection is not the point of this book. The point is to stop chasing perfection and start living a happier, optimal life. So these ideas center around the idea of optimalism over perfectionism model. And they all stem from this very central idea of number 1, learn to fail or fail to learn. So that is big idea number 1, learn to fail or fail to learn. This is the biggest idea of them all for me and the basis of what the entire book is about. Dealing with failure, or at least the fear of failure. As Abraham Maslow once said, there are no perfect human beings. And as Brian Johnson from Optimize has said in response to that statement, you and I are not going to be the first. And we're mentioning optimalists, again, doing what we can with the certain circumstances, and perfectionists. But what really is the difference between an optimist and a perfectionist? Now, Tal Tal describes this perfectly, and there is a list on my blog post at zoofit.net. But basically, it's again very parallel. The perfectionist views their journey as a straight line from where they are to success, where the optimalist sees that journey as an irregular spiral. They're going to come down, they're going to fail, they're going to come back up as they go up to success. And because of that straight line, perfectionists fear failure, whereas optimists use failure as feedback. That's how they're able to loop. Perfectionists focus on that destination. That is the only key to them. Whereas an optimist focuses not just on the destination, but on that journey as well. Perfectionists have an all or nothing thinking, whereas optimists have a nuanced, complex thinking. Perfectionists are defensive, they're often fault finders and very harsh, rigid, and static, whereas optimists are open to suggestions. They are benefit finders, very forgiving, adaptable, and dynamic. Now, we all have a bit of perfectionism and optimalism within each of us. The pursuit of a happier, richer, more fulfilling life is more about recognizing where we are trying to be perfect and beating ourselves up when we miss our mark, and always working towards adopting an optimalist mentality as much as possible. Because if we are to succeed, we must learn to fail and embrace those failures. Now, I really relate to this to the animal care field because I feel most animal care professionals are really great at adopting the optimalist mentality with their animals. We let them fail as often as it takes for them to learn a new behavior or to figure out a new enrichment item. But most of us are not that great at this in our own lives. Just imagine if we treated the animals in our care or our children with a perfectionist attitude. Think about what would happen to them if they were constantly criticized and focused on what they hadn't accomplished. And whether we are parents or trainers, our goal is always to empower, to improve self-worth and well-being. So switching from a perfectionist mentality of no mistakes allowed, and I can't do that because I'm afraid to failure, or failure is not allowed, to failures help me learn creates a more empowering environment. One where the child, the animal, and ourselves develop skills to thrive. Now, our next big idea is benefit finders versus fault finders. Now, I don't often read too many quotes from the book in the videos, but this one is really worth it. It's by Theodore Roosevelt, and it's known as the Man in the Arena speech. And it says, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbled, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by the dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself for a worthy cause, who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly." So now, if you didn't get some goosebumps listening to that, then please do yourself a favor and replay that passage. The man in the arena is the true optimalist. Those who persecute us for not being perfect, the animal rights extremists, or mostly ourselves, those are the fault finders. And where do you want to be remembered as standing? On the sidelines criticizing, or in the arena fighting your battles and at least being able to say that you tried? And when we talk about fault finders and benefit finders, we aren't suggesting adopting a Pollyanna view of life. The benefit finders are still realistic. It's just that they focus on, one, what they have control over in situations, and that's typically the response to the situation, and two, the solutions rather than the problems. And they find the opportunities within the challenges rather than the obstacles and the surrounding problems. So rather than worry about all the things that are wrong or could go wrong or were wrong, which 90% of the time are ideas we have no control over, Benefit finders, the optimalists, focus on how we respond to certain situations, how we show up, what we do if things don't turn out the way we hoped, and mentally preparing for the worst while looking for the best in any given scenario. So what are some of the challenges in our lives that we can turn into benefits? Are we fault finders, finding fault even in paradise? Or are we benefit finders, seeing the positive in every situation, even what others might consider hell? All right, so we're moving on to the next big idea, that good enough principle. Hey guys, we all want the perfect life. There's no harm in wanting it. Who wouldn't want to be the perfect spouse, the perfect parent, the perfect animal trainer, the perfect role model for fitness and health, the employee, or the perfect conservationist, etc.? And we all may strive for perfection in the important areas of our life, but we honestly can't be perfect in all areas of life. There is going to be some give in an area here and there. So if you work 60 hours a week because you're dedicated to your job and want to be recognized for your commitment, then other areas in your life may falter. You may not have as much one-on-one time with your significant other, or have as much time to work out or hang out with friends, at least in a non-COVID-19 lockdown world, as you ideally would like. And with all these ambitions and certainly no way to achieve perfection in all of them, am I doomed to be frustrated in all areas or give up many of these ideals? Not exactly. Tal shares that there is a third option, the way of the optimalist. Instead of demanding perfection in all areas of life, recognize the constraints of reality, that we can't and won't have everything the way we would ideally envision it. Next, determine what the minimum would be good enough to create a happy medium. Sure, I'd love to read a book every single week, but maybe one a month is good enough. In an ideal world, I would attend all of my optimized coaching calls live and participate and be completely present. But realistically, I can commit to 2 live calls and watch the others as recordings in my study time. But this doesn't mean that I can't or am not allowed to do more. Doing what is good enough relieves pressure to be perfect in a world that is anything but perfect right now. Now, following the good enough principles doesn't mean we can't do better. It means that we are realistic and settling for a balanced, more optimized life. So this is like finding the middle ground of our virtues. Aristotle, that very wise Stoic philosopher, once said that virtue is not an extreme manifestation of personal quality, but it lies between the insufficiency and the excess of that quality. So courage, for example, isn't having no fear. It's doing what you know needs to be done despite that fear. It's this happy medium between no fear, which would be rash and impulsive boldness, and too much fear, which would be cowardice. And living the good enough life doesn't mean we give up everything on our ideal life. It is finding that happy medium, that virtuous life between perfection and doing nothing. So what are some areas in your life where you can adopt the good enough principle? Switch from a perfectionist, do-it-all mentality to an optimalist, good enough, virtuous mean, and find satisfaction and fulfillment in all areas of your life. All right, our fourth big idea, that is the PRP, or a happier LRS for humans. So in animal training, when the animal does something incorrect, the wrong behavior or incorrect criteria, or sometimes they just do nothing after you've asked for a behavior, the way a trainer responds is just as vital to the animal's learning as when they do the behavior correctly. So trainers have developed what they call an LRS, which stands for the least reinforcing scenario. Now, of course, rewarding an animal for an incorrect behavior won't teach them the correct action. But in modern training, punishment is not an option either. Punishment doesn't actually teach the animal what we want them to do, and it often diminishes our relationship with the animal. Ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away either. So the LRS, the least reinforcing scenario, helps the trainer communicate as clearly as possible that the behavior that the animal just performed or did not perform will not earn them a reward. It's a neutral response, neither reinforcing nor punishing. But it is a response, meaning that we acknowledge the behavior happened, and then we just simply move on. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we humans treated ourselves with the same compassion that animal trainers treat their animals? Well, we can. The first step is to understand what we are responding to after a disappointing or upsetting event. Often we react to our interpretation of the event rather than the event itself. So an event leads to a thought, and then the thought evokes an emotion. When we interpret the event negatively, it leads to a more disturbing emotion. But instead of punishing ourselves with guilt, shame, or other feelings associated with fear of failure, Tal Ben-Shahar suggests that we follow his PRP process. Now, the PRP process is give yourself permission to be human, reconstruct the situation, and then gain a wider perspective. So for permission, we allow ourselves to feel the disappointing or frustrating emotion. Emotions are part of our reality. It's okay to be disappointed, but rather than dwell on it, let's learn from it, which is our next step, reconstruction. So reconstruction is where we change our interpretation of an event from a negative or unhelpful interpretation to a positive, helpful one. So ask yourself, what can I learn from this failure or from this disappointment? The reconstruction from shame or guilt to a learning experience allows us to grow and move forward. Though we may still feel disappointed that things didn't turn out the way we had hoped they would, we remind ourselves that no significant journey is free of failure. We either win or we learn. And finally, we change our perspective. Look at the bigger picture by appreciating all the wonderful things in our life, which taken together eclipse that particular experience that was maybe a little bit painful. So animal trainers have their LRS and Tal Ben-Shahar has the PRP. I have a practice I call AC/DC. Yes, that is a riff from the 90s rock band. It stands for Acknowledge, Compassion, and Data Collection. Now, first I acknowledge the event that brought on a negative feeling. For me, maybe another agent rejected me for having a lack of having a substantial platform. The second, I'm going to show myself some compassion. Yes, this is upsetting. I've worked hard on ZooFit and I want to share it with the world. It's understandably frustrating to be rejected. But then third, I'm going to use this event as data collection. What can I do moving forward to show agents that A, I'm willing to work my ass off to promote my book, or B, attract more followers while being true to myself? So you can use the PRP, that permission, reconstruction, and perspective, or the AC/DC for yourself. So think of a recent event that upset you emotionally. Go through the steps. Give yourself permission to be human and acknowledge what happened. Then reconstruct the situation and see what you can learn from it. And shift your perspective to focus on the positives in your life. This isn't about ignoring or avoiding painful emotions. It's about gaining a new perspective and appreciating all aspects of our journey, the wins and the failures. And that leads us to our fifth big idea, suffering and pain with hope and optimism. During the Vietnam War, Admiral James Stockdale was a prisoner of war for over 7 years. He became the definition of resilience in the face of adversity. According to Stockdale, there are 2 defining characteristics of captives who are most likely to survive the brutal conditions of Vietnamese prison. Number 1, accepting rather than ignoring the harsh reality of their situation. And number 2, never stop believing that they would someday get out. That is, they never lost hope that all would work out in the end. So hope and optimism are literally key to surviving. So right now, our world is experiencing a truly difficult and trying time. Whole countries are shut down to help stop the spread of the coronavirus. It is frustrating, it's upsetting, and it's, well, not to take away from actual prison, but it's pretty brutal. So how can we apply hope and optimism equation into our situation we are experiencing now? Recognize them and face them honestly. Yes, these restrictions suck, but then also face them with hope and optimism. We will get through this. Let me repeat. We will get through this. To improve your sense of hope and optimism, Tal encourages another practice for dealing with these challenges in our lives. If you are suffering, he tells us to be thankful. Now, being mindful and focusing on the positive aspects of your life, but not ignoring the disappointment, problems, and struggles, will improve your sense of well-being. Now, research has shown that gratitude doesn't just make us more appreciative in our lives. We experience higher levels of many positive emotions: happiness, determination, energy, and, of course, optimism. Those who practice regular gratitude are more likely to work towards a life dream or important personal goal. And participants who in studies on gratitude also slept better, exercised more, and experienced fewer symptoms of physical illness. When we practice the gratitude exercise mindfully, when we take the time and make the effort to savor the good in our lives, we benefit in two ways. First, we become more appreciative, and the good in our lives appreciates. When we practice gratitude, being grateful for the good in our lives, the good in our lives tends to grow. The second benefit of gratitude is the exercise of mindfulness. The mindfulness is being fully aware of whatever it is that we are doing and accepting the present moment without judgment or evaluation. It is the practice of acceptance. Now, in the same way that understanding the theory of what would improve your tennis backhand, for example, is only going to take you so far, you actually have to practice the moves in order to become really good at them. So theorizing about acceptance has its limits. We must practice it in order to master it. So what hardships are going on in your life right now? With coronavirus still keeping us from returning to normal life, this might not be a difficult question to answer. But how can you appreciate the situation just a little bit more? What can you learn from it? And in what ways can you grow? Let's practice mindfulness and gratitude, recognizing the challenges we face, recognizing the hardships, and making the most out of bad situation. When we appreciate the good in our lives, the good in our lives appreciates. That is all I have for this actually shortened version of what Pursuit of Perfect is all about. This book is just so jam-packed with big ideas. I can't recommend enough. Pick it up and read it yourself. Tell me what you think. Are you a recovering perfectionist or a growing optimalist? What big idea appealed to you, and how can you implement it today? Take better care of ourselves so we can show up as the best versions of ourselves for the animals, our community, and the entire world. Thanks, and have another optimized, fulfilling day, and see you next time.